Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Reese number 521D. This is an automatic door bottom, is what it is. It's the 521 by Reese. It happens to be in the D finish, and I've got it right here. This is going to be an automatic door bottom that is available. We're going to talk about automatic door bottoms in no particular order. We talk about them just as it comes to mind. An automatic door bottom is simply stated as a piece of hardware that will automatically seal, the door bottom when the door is closed. So as you close the door, the automatic door bottom will literally, at that moment, the very last few degrees of close, give you a seal at the bottom of the door. Now there are many different manufacturers. There are different applications. There's full surface. There's semi. There's recessed or semi-recessed, I guess. Then there's full mortise. Surface mount applies to the face of the door, which is what we're doing with the 521. You could also recess it so that it's flush on the bottom of the door. That wouldn't be a problem. The difference is one is mounted on the face of the door, and the other you would mortise the bottom of the door, the depth equal to the thickness of the body, and then the height of the preparation is equal to the height of the automatic door bottom. You can also buy models that are fully mortised into the bottom of a wood door. You can buy those that are intended to reside within the space of the inverted bottom channel of your steel door. That would also be called a mortise version as well, in the sense of you're not mortising it, but it's intended to occupy that space in that inverted bottom channel. Now, the 521 by Reese is their flagship automatic door bottom. This is going to be rated for STC type openings. You're going to be able to, when you have a proper complete Reese STC system of gasketing, you'll be able to hit STC 46 when you're doing the 599 head and jam seal along with the 521 automatic door bottom. The 521 will also work on exceptionally large doors up to 8 foot wide, is what they say. I've never seen a single leaf 8 foot wide, but it's not unheard of to have leaves that are 5 foot wide for sure. So Reese can accommodate really wide doors. The other models that I just touched on, there is a link below this video to a document called Product Brochure. And it might be handy to pull that up because I'm referring to it at this time. And I'll probably say in this video that automatic door bottoms are very elegant ways by which to seal the bottom of the door. And as you pull that document up, you'll see the 521. Okay, you'll see its sister products as well, the 330 and the 933. The 521 is the model that is tested in that system of an STC 46 up to STC 46 rating. And I usually don't sell it in instances outside of an STC application or in applications where it's just a standard application, meaning this is a huge automatic door bottom. Here it is. It's 2.5 inch tall. Now it's being shown here partially dropped, and we'll get into that in a bit. But the body is large. It's 2.5 inch tall, the body alone. Okay, it is 7/8 thick, 15/16 actually. If you are looking for an automatic door bottom for your house, this might admittedly be overkill. I'm a fan of hardware doing the job, but when you have an application where you have such a large piece of hardware, it's going to catch the eye. It's going to sound like it's a big heavy-duty piece of equipment. You're going to hear the item work as the door is certainly being opened. So you might want to look at the less robust 320 model that's there. That would be typical for residential or light duty commercial. But if you've got something that takes a ton of volume or STC rated, yeah, the 521 is a good choice. They have their 321 that's there as well, and that is a low-end model. All of those share in common the fact that they're surface mounted. None of them show the fact that they can be mortised flush to the face. If you wanted this big door bottom or any of them, you can surface mount it. That's the intent. You could also mortise the bottom of the door, as I said earlier, and then apply it so that it is flush with the face of the door. The downside of that is you certainly couldn't do that to a fire-rated door in the field. Your door would have to be manufactured for it. And the way that you order it differs based on how you're mounting it. When you mount it in a surface mount application, the net size you need is different than when you're mortising it, because that will run the entire width of the door. Now, when you go to, and we'll go more about over the size that you order when we get to the installation instructions. When you scroll to page 2, you're going to see that you've got an aluminum style door bottom there. You've got the one for hollow metal. That's the 372A. Those are great options for hollow metal doors because the seal is concealed. You don't really see much of it. Or I like to supply it or specify it when we do a belt and suspenders type approach. When the client really wants the best seal, okay, great. Exterior outswinging door. Let's put a door sweep outside with a drip cap. Let's toss an automatic door bottom into the mix. And if you even want to get triple secured, do a bump up or a latch track threshold. That will thoroughly seal the bottom of the door. And why would you need to go to such extremes? Well, incredibly hot climates, southern Florida, where I am. Incredibly cold northern climates for many months of the year. Yeah, sealing the door is money, is the bottom line. So you might consider the belt and suspenders and duct tape approach, I suppose. You're really going to cover it. The 370A, that's the mortise mount to the left of the hollow metal version. That'd be for a wood door along with its larger brethren, the 430 and the 943. The neoprene changes when you go from heavy duty down to standard duty. The nylon brush models would be appropriate if you had a carpet application. Residential applications can very often have a carpet situation where you're sealing against. You can have a door that's going to partially close where the carpet kind of runs a little bit long. And in that instance, you would want the nylon brush so that the bristles can shoot down into the carpeting like this, okay? And then that bar that's there is what will basically stop the unit from going any further so that the bristles sink into the carpet, make your seal, and move on. Basically, when you're dealing with the heavy-duty units, you're going to have a big piece of sponge neoprene, open cell neoprene. It's going to be hollow little air pockets in there. That is appropriate for your STC ratings. And when you have your light duties, you'll either have some smaller sponge neoprene, or in the 321, you'll have vinyl, which is more of an economy grade model. That covers all of the door bottoms by Reese. They have a petite offering of that material. There are other manufacturers that offer a lot more variety. I really should say just simply variations on the theme. But Reese covers all of the bases. Standard, medium, heavy duty, surface mount or recess, mortise for wood, aluminum, and hollow metal. Okay, so they cover all those bases really well. So that's the product brochure. The description down below tells us that it's an automatic door bottom. It's sponge neoprene and pile. What that means is you're going to see right here, there's a piece of inserted pile. Well, that's in the proper orientation, and the reason that we ask for the handing of the unit at the time of order, I personally would want the pile inserted on the exterior face. That's where I would want it. I'd want to stop that dead in the tracks out here. So this model would be appropriate for a right-hand door. Okay, hinge side's going to be here. Did I say that right? Yeah, definitely a right-hand door. So it's going to swing this way because the pile is on the outside. So from your perspective, this is a right-hand door. You might say, well, I can just flip the thing over. You can. Can you? Yeah, you can, but like I said, I would prefer if the pile was on the exterior, and that's obviously meant to seal against the inside of the aluminum channel. So that's really where the handing aspect is going to come from. If you don't really care what side it's on, order any hand. It's all good for me. And technically, you could probably tug that pile out, but I sure wouldn't want to monkey with trying to get it back in, because sometimes you need to pull and push at the same time to get that material to where it has to go. Now you'll also notice in that cut sheet that they can do some lead lining on their 370. So be mindful of that if you do have an application that's going to require the integrity of a lead-lined application to be maintained. You'll certainly want to come to to the 370 for that option. Okay. Looking at the rest of the product catalog, I don't see anything else there worthy of notation at this time, except to say if you're looking for STC ratings, pull up the entire product catalog from Reese and review their 599 and their language describing the testing method by which all of this achieved that STC rating. So very interesting. STC is a real application that you bump into occasionally, whether it be an amateur musician who really just wants to keep their spouse from hearing everything, all the way up to government applications that require in laboratory situations STC control over an opening. Now, sponge, neoprene, and pile seal, we talked about that. The length, this is 42 inch. This is available on the site, I think, in everything from 12 inch to 8 foot. You can have any size you want in that range. If you have need for a custom size, by all means, indicate that in the comment field when you order the item, because there's no need to have to really cut any of this down. And here's what I mean. You know what? We'll table that and we'll get to the size when we get to the installation instructions. You're going to want to order the size necessary. The factory's already cutting the material. You might as well just tell them the size. If you can't, determine the size, because maybe where the location of the job is in relationship to your location, you can't get there to measure it, but you know it's a 3-foot door. Makes perfect sense. 18 to 24 inch models cannot be trimmed at all. 36 through 48 can be trimmed up to 3 inch, and assume that all other sizes can be trimmed 1 inch above 24 inch. Okay. Which may be a problem, because if you have a door that is a certain size, fitting it between the stops might require greater than 1 inch. So I do encourage you to review, and order it correctly. And when I say correctly, I really mean order it for the appropriate size. Save yourself the trouble. Let the factory take the responsibility of getting it right. Maximum drop is 3/4 inch. The 521 is going to require a full 1/2 inch compression against the floor to give you an adequate seal, but the maximum drop is 3/4 inch. What I mean to say is it needs to have a 1/2 inch of drop to move to give you a full seal. This is intended to be a surface mounted model. This is dark bronze. That's what the D stands for in the part number. 521D is dark bronze. I'm a big fan of dark bronze from Reese. I believe it's a very elegant, regal anodized color. No one else, in my opinion, matches their dark bronze as well as Reese does when they're trying to really match an oil rubbed finish. You'll get some dark bronze anodized on some weather stripping and it's really dark, like all but black. Then you get some other stuff that's, none of it has this rich brown tone as much as the Reese product does. And depending on how the light hits it, you might be able to see what I'm saying. I use Reese products when I'm matching oil rubbed hardware without exception. And I wouldn't substitute it because I believe it matches it so well. It's my favorite dark bronze finish on aluminum for sure. It is fire rated. It is obviously sound seal rated, air seal rated as well. We talked about the trim. And that they're not designed to be installed onto carpet, over carpet. For best results, the door bottoms should be on a solid surface. You know, obviously with the neoprene, there's going to be some surface area here that if you're a bit pitted or if you're a bit unlevel, that's going to help contend with that. But at the end of the day, it basically needs to be a solid surface, whether it be a sill or a threshold, whatever the case might be. Now, back to what automatic door bottoms do. Automatically seal the door bottom or the bottom of the door. They do that by the action of the door being pushed closed. And as they get pushed closed, the door that is, it will force the actuating mechanism to drop the drop bar down and seal the bottom of the door. That's in essence basically how these things work. I don't know when they were invented. I have reason to believe it was for sure in the 1940s, but that's based on a manufacturer telling me that they invented it and then others stole the idea. I personally would be surprised if it didn't exist many decades before the 1940s, but that's the best information that I have regarding the origin of automatic door bottoms. I do not believe that they have evolved very much since then. They may have evolved in the sense of the material science that goes into the seal or the addition of the pile, things of that nature, and the anodizing, maybe, I suppose. But all in all, the product really hasn't developed much beyond what it originally was. Sure, the original models were certainly not STC rated. They were not specifically intended for pocket door applications, things of that nature. You probably couldn't order them 8 foot long either, but nonetheless. Now, let's move on. And the same operation principle really stands regardless of the application. There is a bar that makes contact with an immovable object. That bar has nowhere to go but to be pushed into the housing. That will then basically belly a flat spring, forcing the bottom to drop. That's how these work. Now, the 521 is a bit of a unique bird. It's not like many others in the sense that it comes, you need to read the instructions when you get it before you do anything. Read them twice. If you've done automatic door bottoms in the past, this is different. It's still the same in general function, but the way it shows up to you, you're going to say, what is this thing I have here? I don't recognize any of this. Got to read the instructions. So the bottom line is what that means. When the unit arrives to you, you're going to have this little plastic doodad. That stays there. This is your actuating side. When that is pushed in, the bottom drops. As I said earlier, it's already partially extended. That's also evidenced by this gap that's here that I can stick my finger into. In the installation instructions, which are listed down below this video, is where we're going to right now. It's going to state, it's got a 1/2 inch block stuck in here. Okay, if I were to push on my actuating bar, push on this to get my bottom to seal, drop down a little bit, that bar is going to come out. Don't lose the bar. I'm just taking it. Come on. So sorry. Okay, I got it out. So now it's out. I release that. Now it all comes up. And that bar is there because you need that, or that spacer is there. It's because you need that spacer. So that puppy is going to go right back in there. It doesn't look like it's square, actually. No, it's not. It's really 1/2 by 9/16. So be mindful of that. Put the 1/2 inch side back in when it goes back in. So that's when it arrives to you. Don't take it out. You can leave it in there. I'm only taking it out for the purposes of demonstration. This is what it's going to look like more so in your standard installation. You're going to want to have that tugged out a little bit. And when the door closes, so imagine that this is installed with this projecting drop bar hanging out of the end of the unit, just like it's shown here. When you've got that mounted on the face of the door, and be mindful, these are only mounted on the push side. There is no way to accommodate installing this on the pull side. So exterior doors usually swing in. They often swing out as well. So be mindful that regardless of in-swing or out-swing, this is installed on the push side. If it's a home, yeah, it's probably going to be mounted on the outside of the door. If it's a commercial space with an exterior door that swings out, it's going to be mounted on the interior of that door opening. Now back to the block. The reason they want that in there is because you use it during the installation procedure. So if you're familiar with automatic door bottoms, you don't have an adjusting rod down here that you turn, even though some models do feature this sort of, it directly pushes on the actuating bar itself. But I've not seen any others that have the block in it. You do want the block because that's how you're going to position it. Let's fire up the installation instructions and let's tackle it head on. We talked about the trimming, so I'm not going to go over that now, and that it has a maximum drop of 3/4 inch. There are models in the marketplace that will give you a 1-inch drop. Reese would not supply you with that model. Be mindful of that. Cut the door bottom to the length as follows. Step 1. Determine the distance between the door stops. Door bottom should be cut 3/32 of an inch shorter than this distance. Okay. Again, mounted on the push side. Unlock the door. Go outside. Pull the door closed, assuming it's an in-swing. If it's an outswing, stay inside. Get down. Measure the distance between the two stops. Really quick. Here's your frame. The distance between the stops is there to there, right? That's the distance between the two stops. Let's do some math to further illustrate it real quick. Because it's the most typical application that's universally understood in construction, a hollow metal door. Those conventions don't really change in terms of the stop dimension. A 3-foot hollow, a 3.0 or 3-foot wide hollow metal door is going to be generally 35 and 13/16, probably more commonly the last so many years 35 and 3/4. Great. Don't really care about the net door size. What I care about is the dimension between the stops. But this is the example because the projection of the stop is basically always 5/8. It can be something else, but it's pretty much always 5/8. So 36 minus 5/8 minus 5/8 puts us at 34 and 3/4. Is that right? Yeah, sure it is. 34 and 3/4. That's the distance between the stops. Deduct 3/32 off of that. What are you going to be at? 34.75 minus 0.096. 35 and 5/8 plus 35 and 5/8 plus a 32nd. I can't do the 30 seconds in my head. Forgive me. 34, not 35. 34 and heavy on 5/8. That's your net size. Okay, that's why it's important. So you get out there and you measure it. The clear opening between the stops. Now, why is that the case? Because when you're on the push side of the door and the door is closed, and you mount this on the bottom of the door at the bottom, it can only reside between the door stops itself. Now, because we had talked about the other method of mounting this, and what I mean by that is you could take this model, again, mortise it flush and have it hang off the end of the door. If you're going to do that, then what you have to do is order this the net size of your door, because you're going to want this to run all the way long. The only problem is because this is so thick, and if your door is beveled, you're going to kind of have to cheat this a little bit and probably go to the small dimension on the push side of the door. If your door is beveled and you put a tape measure on the pull side versus the push side, that door is going to be a different width on either side, and it's going to be almost different by 1/8. They're not going to put that on a chop saw and skim that 3-degree bevel off of there on either end, although that would be really cool. But the fact of the matter is, be mindful of that. So you would order it differently if you're going to if you're going to recess it, if you're going to mortise it to the face of the door. Again, not to be done in the field if it's a fire rated door, that's for sure. And even if it's not fire rated, you'll have to inspect whether or not the door integrity won't be compromised by doing that much work. So we've talked about your net size. Again, order it that size. The factory's already cutting this out of big, long components. Let them build it for you. Do the math as we discussed. There is a 1/2-inch block in part when shipped opposite the actuating button. This is the actuating button. You'll notice this side does not have one. This holds the sealing bar in the lowered position as when the door is closed, meaning as if the door was closed. As if the door was closed. Okay. It's important to have that there. You're going to want to push it in flush. I'm leaving it hang out so that when my customer gets it, they can kind of understand what's happening there. But you'll want, I'll just push it flush, I guess. Okay. That's why it's there. Well, it's there. Let's move on why it's there. Note, only the end opposite the actuating button may be trimmed. Again, you're never going to, not again, I've never said it. This is the hinge side of the door. The actuating bar is only and ever the hinge side of the door, okay? This is the lock side of the door. You will only ever trim this side of the door if you have to trim it. If you do have to trim it, they want the bar, the block installed. Let it slide down a little bit, and it will help keep all of the parts from rattling as you cut the material down, okay? Turn the adjusting screw on top of door bottom so the mechanism is withdrawn in as far as possible. We have these are adjusting screws. This is a unique feature on Reese as well. These are drawn in so the bottom is tucked up. You're going to make sure that before you install them, you're going to hit the Phillips screwdriver in there and draw the bottom up. I would remove the block. I would make sure that it's drawn up as much as possible. The cross section of the 521 in the website gives a reference to these weird flathead screws that are threaded down into the top adjusting bar. So you're going to want to make sure that you've sucked it all the way up into the housing. Turn adjusting screws, suck it up. Okay, as far as possible. Step D in part D in step 1. Slide neoprene and sealing bar towards the actuating button and cut the door bottom. Read that whole paragraph first. It is best to apply pressure against the neoprene sealing bar and the 1/2-inch block to prevent vibration of the mechanism while cutting. Trim the neoprene to about 1/4 inch longer than the sealing bar at each end. So if you're going to cut the model down, make sure that you slide the neoprene towards the actuating button. Pull it down so that it's not hanging off. It's not hanging off here. Suck it back down and hold it shy, then cut it. Then you can pull the neoprene back out, and it will be super long, but you're then going to trim it to within 1/4 inch of either end. You want it to be long. You want it to be 1/4 inch. When the door closes, you kind of want that compressing up against the rabbet of the frame. If you find that it's jamming it a little bit, trim it slightly more, but leave it hang long. What you're going to notice is, and the reason for doing that is, when you push this, what happens? If that's projecting out 1/4 inch, when I press it in, now it's only projecting 3/16 of an inch. When I go even further, you see my point. It's not, you want to have some of that hanging out at all times so that you're making that seal when the door is in the closed position, because the bottom of the rabbet is the area of weakness for door sweeps. Now, they sell dust plugs that you apply to the bottom of the jambs to help mitigate that problem. But in order to help mitigate the problem with the door bottom, you leave the neoprene run long. And if you need to trim it with a sharp blade, you can do that after the fact. Okay? Which you will. You'll have to trim it something. Step 2, install on door as follows. To develop full sealing pressure, it is necessary for the sealing bar to drop a full 1/2 inch. These instructions must be carefully followed to ensure this drop is obtained. Obviously, they tested it in this sort of method, so that's why they're saying you must do it this way. With the 1/2 inch block still installed in the door bottom, close the door, lay the bottom in place on the floor, Slide actuating button against the stop and transfer the mounting screw holes. Half-inch block is installed. Close the door. Lay the bottom in place on floor between the stops. Slide actuating button against the stop and transfer movement of screw holes. So the actuating bar with this black piece of plastic, and you want that there. We'll talk about that in a minute. You want that to be actuated. You want to mark your holes. You're going to need a very thin tool to mark your hole locations. Remove the door bottom. Pre-drill the holes. Remove the block and then attach the bottom to the door itself. Open and close the door several times. Cycle the door. Observe how it's sealing. If you need to make adjustments via the adjustment screws, you'll be able to draw that down, okay, because you've sucked it all the way back up in the previous steps. You'll be able to adjust it so that you can provide an accounting for a sill that's not level, because you've got those 3 adjustment screws along the top. 1, 2, and 3, okay? Cycle the door, make any adjustments, ensure the gasket material is properly adjusted so as to not inhibit proper door operation and latching function, closing and latching. This is a fire-rated device. It's permissible. It's listed for you to have it installed on a fire-rated device, on a fire-rated door opening. Now, the important aspect of that is the fact that you have a fire-rated door. It has to be self-closing and it has to be self-latching. If the operation of the automatic door bottom in any way inhibits that, you technically no longer have a fire-rated door. Because, of course, the hallmark of, or the cardinal rule of a fire door is it must be self-closing, must be self-latching. Actually, there's a third rule. They must be free swinging as well. But you've got to be sure that when you walk away from your fire-rated door that the inclusion of the automatic door bottom has not precluded its proper operation. It will fail in a fire inspection, a fire test inspection. It will possibly cause, trouble beyond that as well. Now, having said that, regarding the installation instructions, they obviously show the pile seal on the anterior side, the side facing the door. They're showing it installed there. Upon reflection, I think that I would actually prefer it to be on the side facing the door. Any water coming in from the front, I would actually prefer the pile in both spaces, is the bottom line. They have both extrusion, they have both raceways there for the pile. I'd like to have it installed in both spots. Any water collecting on that door face, not permitting it to at all get inside of the operation, the top of the door bottom, because surely this is not waterproof. I would certainly want the pile to help prevent that from dripping down right where my door is. So having said that, we're going to go with what the manufacturers tested it as. If you need this, talking about fire-rated doors, if you need this labeled, meaning you want visual representation on the face of the unit that it is labeled, reach out to us. The factory can provide that. If you are doing a fire-rated installation, you would request that we obtain from the factory paperwork stating that this item is a listed product, which it is, because it's indicated in the catalog as such. Now, back to finishing up the installation instructions. Step E, operate the door several times to ensure the gasketing material is adjusted so as to not inhibit the proper latching and closing of the door. Finally, please note, door bottoms are not designed to seal directly against carpet. Solid surfaces only. Door bottoms are field reversible and can be semi-mortised, can be used in semi-mortised applications. So they are reversible. This model you wouldn't need to reverse because you can just take it and flip it around, and that's because the screws are just a typical panhead style screw. You've got screws in a complementary finish there. Now in that screw pack, about the carpet, we've already talked about that. Use the bristle model if you're going to do carpet. Now, the problem that we've got here is you've got 4 mounting screws. No problem. You know what to do with those. You then have this little doodad I talked about. That stays on there. That little flathead screw is to be installed on the frame so that the plastic piece makes contact with the head of the screw, so that over time you don't create a divot in your wood frame, which certainly you would. So those 2 pieces are going to communicate to each other just like that. That's why that's there. Then you're going to have 2 tiny little brads and then a piece of L-shaped aluminum. The L-shaped aluminum is intended for this type of application, to finish off the end of that. Okay? You're going to nail it right to the face. You can't have one on this side because they don't make one for this side because of how this sticks out. If you were to semi-mortise it or recess it, as we've been talking about, there are no end caps for that at all because, you know, this L shape is meant to be surface mounted. Okay? You would need something that would attach directly to the aluminum itself, and Reese simply doesn't manufacture that piece. You don't have to have end caps to keep it operating correctly. They are cosmetic. I would prefer to have them there, but if you're going to semi-mortise it, just know there are no end caps. You are always going to see that open end every single time that you open the door. Okay, unless you were to try to fashion something yourself, it would have to be a thin piece of material applied there, and even at that moment, you'll notice that this bar is recessed in. That's because when this gets pushed, the bottom doesn't drop like this. It actually drops like this if we're going to do it in an exaggerated sense. So end caps are going to be sacrificed if that's what you're going to do. UL classified, listed, meets the requirements that are there. Positive pressure tested as well. Gasketing materials for fire-rated doors, intended for application to or with listed steel frames and or classified steel-covered composite hollow metal type doors up to 3 hour, or 20-minute doors up to 20, or wood doors up to 20 minutes. Okay, so composite wood doors, a fire-rated door, a mineral core door, that's going to be up to 90 minute. A particle board door, that would be up to 20 minute. And that's what that would give you. Finally, if there are any questions on the Reese automatic door bottom, please reach out to us. I am partial to Reese, and it's because I really like the quality of the product. Every time I review one of their products and I take it out of the packaging, it simply feels like it's heavier than competitor products. And the reason that it seems heavier to me is because I'm getting weak in my old age, but the actual reason is because the aluminum is thicker. It's a very substantial aluminum wall thickness on all of the products that they do. You don't see this thick aluminum on everyone's material. Reese is not trying to get you the cheap product or the cheapest product. They're trying to, in my opinion, get you the best product, and I think they do an excellent job at that. I'm also partial to them. It's because they have excellent customer service. Customer service is tech support with Reese as well. If the people there that answer the phone, and there's just 2 of them, if they can't answer it for you right then and there, they'll get the answer, and they always and without exception contact you back. We throw as much business we can Reese's way, and it's because they earn it. They deserve it. High quality products, prompt, reliable, predictable shipping lead times, fastest in the industry, in fact, hands down. I challenge anyone to debate me on that. That dark bronze anodized, best in the business as far as my opinion is. And why wouldn't you... if cost is the most important thing, Reese isn't your company. They don't have the thin extrusions. They don't make a lot of vinyl material, even though they have vinyl. They're going to be more proud to sell you their polyurethane, their incredibly high-end door sealing insert material, rather than the commodity stuff. They're not a commodity company. But when you want the weather stripping to stand as proud as your $5,000 worth of 2 exit devices on your pair of 16 gauge doors with 14 gauge frames and access control, Reese is your company. And that's certainly where I exclusively use them, and I'll use them every single time other than when I'm precluded from doing so. There's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Reese products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Any questions on the Reese number 521 in a D finish or any other Reese product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.